Professor Rehman Soban, Dr. Saman Kalagama, Mr. Anushka Vijay, distinguished delegates attending this undoubtedly important symposium, ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by paying a tribute to the quality of the work that you have undertaken, the very distinguished contribution which has been made by the South Asian Economic Forum over the years. I understand it is the 6th occasion on which you are having deliberations of this kind. I had occasion to take a glance at your agenda, the issues that you have selected for detailed treatment in the course of your discussions yesterday and today. And I note that the work that you have been doing falls broadly into 4 categories. You have described those as the 4 pillars which sustain and enrich your work. And I would like, on this occasion, to address to you some brief thoughts of my own on these 4 topics which you have been addressing in the course of your discussions. As I understand it, the areas that you have very properly, I think, very relevantly chosen are the following. First was harnessing the human potential of our region, of South Asia. Harnessing the human potential. The second had to do with water management, food security, and climate change. The third area that you concentrated on was intra-state disparities with regard to state, within states, not among states. And the fourth and final topic was enhancing or increasing private sector competitiveness. I think that you could not have chosen more wisely or more pragmatically in identifying the areas that call for attention. The challenge today is to give real content to the economic dimension of the relationship among our countries, and the areas that you have selected are undoubtedly the most appropriate from that perspective. With regard to harnessing human potential, this is certainly the abiding strength of many of our countries. As far as my own country is concerned, there's no doubt that our principal strength resides in the uniquely high caliber of the island's human resources. So what is it that we need to do as a practical measure to elevate the threshold of vigor, vitality on the part of our people? I would like to tell you, Mr. Chairman, that as we prepare to host a major international event in November this year, I refer to the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, it fell to us to suggest to the Commonwealth Secretariat and to the other participating countries a theme which we consider to be particularly opportune. His Excellency President Mahinda Rajapaksa was particularly eager to ensure that the theme that is chosen has real resonance in the context of priorities in our own country. And the theme that we came up with, Professor Soban, was economic development with social equity. The element of social equity is very important to us. The economy of Sri Lanka is growing at a little above 6.7%, but it is a matter of great consequence to us to ensure that the fruits of that development are equally up and down the country without being confined to a minuscule segment of the community in urban areas. Now, in order to do this, we have adopted the attitude that it is simply not sufficient to ensure accelerated growth of the economy and then leaving it to ordinary market forces to ensure the percolation of these benefits down to the grassroots level. There is, of course, a school of economists who believe that once you achieve a certain level of economic development, there is no more for the state to do. In fact, any other form of intervention would assume the character of a distortion. So all that you do at that point is to leave things to the interplay of market forces, and there would be a general elevation of the threshold of prosperity in the country. No doubt this would happen over time, but since human patience is finite, it is very much our view in the government of Sri Lanka, and I know that this view is shared by many other governments in the region, that there really needs to be measured, discriminating intervention by the state to ensure that economic development does not consist of theoretical abstractions which are remote from the lives of ordinary people, but on the contrary, they have a real impact in terms of improving the day-to-day lives of people living in all parts of the country. So that was the rationale underpinning the importance that we have attached to social equity. I think the state certainly can do many practical things to facilitate the accomplishment of this objective. One of these is to put a particular focus on the development of physical infrastructure to make the remoter regions of the island more accessible. Never in our history has there been this degree of investment. There really has been a colossal investment in highways, in railroad systems, the power and energy sector, all of which has served to break down the barriers between the urban and the rural areas of Sri Lanka. It was the case that even as recently as 7 or 8 years ago, the per capita income of the district of Colombo was 7 times what it was in some of the more distant areas like Monaragala and Polonnaruwa. That is no longer the case. The gap is narrowing. It is also important to ensure that government policy is in accordance with priorities as identified by the community. And I think the best way of doing this is to energize, to vitalize democratic institutions at the grassroots level, so that the representatives of the people, particularly at that level, are able to reflect in the policies they adopt the true aspirations of the people they represent. We have also put considerable effort into modernizing education, curricula in our universities and other institutions of tertiary education, to ensure that there is a greater correlation between educational programs and employability. I think this is very important, particularly in a country which has lived through 2 youth insurrections, which basically arose from a deep disenchantment with the social order and a perception that there were real problems about access to opportunity. It was a problem that was significantly connected to unrequited expectations. When people are educated, naturally, the level of expectation is high. And if there's a failure of delivery, even at the basic level, the natural consequence of that would be a sense of indignation against the social order. So education has to be relevant. It has to make its own contribution to improving the lot of ordinary people. We have therefore also concentrated on increasing the linkages between the private sector and educational institutions, so that rather than follow the traditional method of producing people with degrees and then wondering what to do with them, we have reversed that process, tried to ascertain what are the demands of the marketplace, and to structure our curricula in such a manner as to cater for the pragmatic demands of the marketplace, so that employment does not become as acute a problem as it has been in the past. Now, I know as an educationist, Professor Rehman Soban was kind enough to refer to my educational career before I came into full-time politics. Now, as an educationist, as a former law professor and a vice-chancellor, I'm very much aware of the creativity and the resilience of our young people. I had the experience during my academic days of students coming up with inventions I remember one student who was able to develop a process for the manufacturing of fertilizer from the silt in our tanks in the North Central province. There was another student who devised a mechanism for plucking coconuts. Now, people like this who have good ideas, creativity, are hampered by two things. One is a lack of capital. They don't have the seed capital to make commercial use of their inventions. The second problem they have is that they are not sufficiently sophisticated to make use of the law governing intellectual property, patents, trademarks, copyrights, that kind of thing. So that what happens regrettably in practice is that other unscrupulous persons make use of their inventions, so that these young people who deserve support are left high and dry, and they are not able to reap the benefit of their own endeavors and their own contributions to society. So we have tried to address some of those problems. With regard to climate change, Sri Lanka certainly, together with many other countries, believes that economic development and preservation of the environment are not incompatible objectives. It has certainly been our experience that economic development will not be sustainable unless it is accompanied by a preoccupation with environmental considerations. That is very much a part of our culture. It goes back to the time when Buddhism was introduced into our country during the time of the Emperor Asoka in India. He sent his son, Arhat Mahinda, to Sri Lanka with the message of Buddhism. And when he arrived here in Mihintale, that's near Anuradhapura, he accosted the king who was out hunting, and the king was aiming his arrow at a deer. And Arhat Mahinda, addressing the king, made a pronouncement which encapsulates what is in fact an essential component of our cultural tradition. Addressing the king, he said, "O king, mighty as you are not the sole owner of the environment. You are but a trustee. Our rivers, our mountains, our streams, our valleys do not belong to you. And you have the sacrosanct obligation of handing these things to posterity in the pristine condition in which you inherited these from your forebears." So here is the expression of solicitude with the environment, a sense of pervasive harmony with nature. And that is very much the spirit in which Sri Lanka has responded to the imperatives of economic development. On food security, we think that a vibrant democratic culture is necessary in order to achieve that objective. I would like, in that connection, to refer to the research of Amartya Sen, who was able to demonstrate convincingly that famine, that starvation, is less connected with the scarcity of food items than with a culture within a society of preventing the articulation of priorities on the part of the ordinary people of the country. He was able to show that where there are robust democratic mechanisms at work, people are able to assert their views, and there is democratic governance in a society. In such a society, famine is much less likely to occur. Water management is, of course, crucial in a country such as ours, which is, despite our efforts to industrialize, we have succeeded to a remarkable extent, but our economy remains predominantly agricultural. So access to water is very important. And Sri Lanka has developed, in partnership with multilateral institutions and with foreign governments, major irrigation schemes like Moragahakanda, Umawe. All of that has been one of the principal features of our economic development in recent times. Now, on your third topic, which is intra-state disparities, I think this is very important. Now, take, for example, the rural-urban divide. I think the present government of Sri Lanka can really derive profound and genuine satisfaction from a phenomenon which we are now seeing for ourselves. Today, Professor Rehman Soban, it is a case in our country that often students being placed first, right at the top of the list in intensely competitive public examinations, are students who come from the rural hinterland. We had last year a student from a school in Bandaravilla being placed first in the island in mathematics. Students from Monaragala have excelled in their performance at public examinations, competing with students who have enjoyed all conceivable privileges right from birth and coming from the largest schools, the largest urban schools in the country. This has not happened gratuitously or fortuitously. It has been the result of a conscious effort to uplift conditions in the rural areas of Sri Lanka. Better schools, better qualified teachers, laboratories, facilities in the playing field, all of this has been made available in order to ensure a level playing field for motivated, talented, hardworking students in our country. And we are seeing the results of that before our very eyes today. But then, of course, the argument against it, there's been no final decision on the part of the government, but we do need to take into account the fact that there has never really been any impediment or constraint with regard to access to education for women in our country. We are also giving a lot of attention to migrant workers and ways and means of protecting their interests in foreign countries, because remittances by these people from abroad constitute one of the major sources of revenue for the Sri Lankan exchequer. In fact, the quantum of these remittances is now on a par with what we earn from Sri Lanka's principal export, that is garments. The two are now almost on a par. So that is a matter that is very much engaging our attention. And on the final subject that you have been working on, that is the competitiveness of the private sector, government believes that there is a certain area of activity which belongs to the domain of the private sector. And as far as that area is concerned, the state is not institutionally equipped to deal with those issues directly. And the legitimate role of the state, as far as those activities are concerned, would be to place at the disposal of the private sector the facilities and the resources which they need to make a success of what they undertake. As far as the SAARC region is concerned, Sri Lanka has bilateral trade agreements with India and Pakistan. We entered into the free trade agreement with India in 1998. It came into operation in 2000. We also have a bilateral trade agreement with Pakistan, which we entered into in the year 2005. But we have found that one of the major constraints with regard to the development of trade has been non-tariff barriers. And I'm sure that in the course of your deliberations, you would have addressed that issue, non-tariff barriers. Procedures with regard to customs, with regard to verification, laboratory testing, matters of that kind. We have also put a lot of effort into twinning arrangements between companies in this country and companies abroad. And I might tell you that on the sidelines of the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, we are organizing a business forum to which we are inviting entrepreneurs from countries that are not in the Commonwealth. So the business forum is something which is very important for Sri Lanka at this time, because it will involve a sharp focus on our country as an aviation hub, a shipping hub, a knowledge hub, a manufacturing hub, and so on. And it is very much our hope and expectation that from all your countries, we will have a vigorous response, as indeed we are having now. And we have no doubt that this event will be of tremendous significance from the point of view of the development of our economy. So these are some of the thoughts that I wanted to share with you on this occasion. As you conclude your deliberations, may I wish you every success with regard to your work. I certainly give you the firm assurance that any recommendations which you care to make on the basis of the discussions that you had during the last 3 days will certainly receive the earnest consideration of the government of Sri Lanka. We recognize that you in this room represent a huge reservoir of talent and a richness of comparative experience. So we certainly would like to tap into that experience and to benefit from it optimally. We look forward to the recommendations that you will make on the footing of the discussions that you have had. I thank you for the opportunity to share with you these thoughts as you conclude your deliberations. And I thank you for the honor that you have bestowed on me. I have no doubt of the value of your contribution to the development of my own country. Thank you.